Hello everybody, my name is Swaroop Srinivas. I'm an advocate practicing under the Karnataka High Court and its subordinate courts. I am today before all of you to give a brief lecture or law lecture on controversy of impleading third parties in a suit for specific performance. So before I go on with the topic, I would like to state a little bit about myself. I finished my LLB. I'm basically from Bangalore, and I studied my LLB in Bangalore Institute of Legal Studies, and I completed my course and got enrolled under the Karnataka State Bar Council, and in the year 2017, and I've been practicing ever since. I started my practice with Honorable Shri SKV Chalapati, who was a designated senior advocate. I was working under him in Chalapati and Srinivas. Subsequently, in the month of January, I quit that office and I've started my independent practice. And since past 3 months, I've been doing my independent practice. And my area of expertise, not area of expertise, I will say maybe my area of practice is mostly civil laws and quasi-criminal cases, service matters, consumer matters, etc. So today I am actually quite excited to be before all of you to share a little bit of knowledge that I have acquired on this subject, which I just explained, that is the controversy of impleading third parties in a suit for specific performance. I believe it is a very interesting topic which I came across during my working under Chalapati and Srinivas, because we came across such a case, and I did some research, and it appeared to me a topic which can be viewed from different perspectives, and is a very well balanced topic which can be interpreted in either ways, which is again because of the nature of the topic, which is causing a lot of confusion also, and it is subject to interpretation. So that is why I chose this topic particularly, because it seemed very interesting and it seemed like a topic which requires some sort of research, and it takes some time to understand also. So this was a good opportunity provided by us from Daksha Legal Group, and I thank Mr. Basuraj for giving us this opportunity. I'm not looking at this as a competition. Maybe this can be looked at as a platform to share knowledge amongst the other advocates, and it helped me also to do some more research into this topic, and the knowledge that I acquired, I am very excited to share with everybody. So to start off with the topic that I have today, now first we need to understand what is a suit for specific performance. So we'll go step by step. I have divided my seminar into step by step so that it will be easier for everybody to understand. So what is a suit for specific performance is a question. Now, in case there are contracts that we enter into on everyday basis, on various aspects we enter into a contract. So now what happens when, fine, if the contract is acted upon by both the parties and the contract is completed, the purpose of the contract is completed, then fine. What if more than often we come across situations wherein the contracts are not completed, maybe either by one of the parties, there is a breach of contract. Now what is a breach of contract is where there are terms which are stipulated under the contract, some agreements that have been entered into, and such terms have not been met with. Okay, so the other side or one of the parties to the contract alleges that the other party has not completed their side of the obligation. So this causes breach of contract. Now, what are the remedies for breach of contract is a question. Legally, when there is a breach of contract, there are damages. First, the thing that comes into our mind is damages. Now, in damages, there are liquidated damages and unliquidated damages. Liquidated damages are damages which are determined in the contract itself. That means in the contract itself, the parties agree that in the event of breach of contract, such and such will be the compensation, monetary compensation that will be payable. That is liquidated damage. What is unliquidated damage is a question. Unliquidated damages are the damages which are not stipulated by the party. Now it comes to the discretion of the court or the parties who are coming for a settlement. The damage which is not stipulated in the contract itself will become an unliquidated damage. Okay, that is another thing. Now another step further is another relief available in case of breach of contract, that is specific performance. Now specific performance is a little bit of a complicated topic. Now what happens, there is a breach of contract and the other party is not willing to take money as compensation. Now, in the event money is not taken as compensation for a breach of contract, then you can go for specific performance. Now, what is specific performance? Is you ask the party who has breached the contract, or the party who has illegally terminated the contract, or a party who has not acted in accordance with the contract. So, you ask such a party to perform his part of the obligation. In the event he does not do it, you go to the court, and the court, if it grants a specific performance, the specific obligation, the specific act that was agreed to be done, specific obligation that was agreed to be carried out, such an obligation has to be done by the other party. Now here you say that the money will not, it's an irreparable loss that has been caused. The money shall not compensate the breach that has been committed by the other party. In this event, you go for specific performance. Now, specific performance suits arise out of this. More often than ever, I think we come across specific performance suits in civil courts, and more often than anything, specific performance is sought in a contract for agreement of sale. Maybe that can be taken as an example. There are many other, for any contract, for the matter of fact, if you are able to prove that money cannot compensate the loss that has been committed, then you can go for specific performance. There is no bar. But however, more often than anything, if we go practically speaking, the most enforced contract in way of specific performance is contracts wherein you agree to sell some property. So this becomes a very important topic for any lawyer, because if you're doing civil law practice, the specific performance suit is one of the integral part of civil law, because we come across this suit very frequently, and it involves a complicated question of law, and understanding it is very important for any lawyer. So now we have understood what is specific performance and when you go for specific performance. Now, second leg of the topic. Now we'll break the topic into two. The topic, as I would want to repeat again, is controversy of impleading a third party in a suit for specific performance. Now we understood what is a suit for specific performance. Now let us go to understand what is impleading a party. Now, plaintiff is known as dominus litis. Now what is dominus litis? Dominus litis, when we say, is plaintiff has a discretion to sue a person at his choice. He can sue anybody. That is a general principle. If I am instituting a case against somebody, I have the option of suing some person at my choice. If I don't sue the right person, I am at the peril of not being able to enforce the decree in favor in the event that I succeed in the suit. So me being the dominus litis, that means the plaintiff who is the dominus litis has a discretion, an inherent discretion rather, with himself, that he can choose a person against whom he has to institute the suit. That is a general principle. Now there are many exceptions. Now parties to the suit is dealt under Order 1 of Civil Procedure Code, as we all know. Now adding or striking of the parties is dealt under Order 1 Rule 10. Now what is impleading? Impleading or deletion. Two things we can come across. Two things is very important for us to learn. Impleading a party is an act of including a party as a plaintiff or as a defendant in an existing suit. That means the suit which is already in motion, that is a running suit. We propose to include a person as a plaintiff or defendant. That is an act of impleading. Deletion, on the other hand, is an antonym to that. That means it is exactly in opposite to what I just told. That means you delete a person who is already there as a plaintiff or defendant during the commencement of the suit. That means when the suit is running, you propose to delete a person, whether he is a plaintiff or a defendant. This is dealt under Order 1 Rule 10. Rule 10.2 to be very specific. Now Order 1 Rule 10.2 generally it says that at any stage of the proceeding. Now, this is very important. At any stage of the proceeding, whether on an application by party or the court in its own discretion deems fit that such a person should be included in the suit or deleted from the suit for the purpose of effectively adjudicating the matter in dispute, for the purpose of appreciating and for the purpose of coming into a right decision in the suit, for the effective adjudication of the dispute that is arising in the suit, upon application by party or suo motu, the court in its own power has the discretion to implead any party, that is include any party in the suit, or delete any party, that is exclude him in the suit. That is the general principle under Order 1 Rule 10 of CPC. So now we understood why we implead a party and who can be impleaded as a party is the next question. Now, the general principle by the virtue of various decisions from the Honorable Supreme Court of India or from our High Court or many other High Courts is the party who is proposed to be included in the suit is divided into two different kinds. One, that is a party who is a necessary party, another being a proper party. It is very important for us to know who is a necessary party and who is a proper party. Now, Order 1 Rule 10 itself does not use any of these words, that is, a person is a necessary party or a proper party. There is nowhere in Order 1 Rule 10 that you can come across that a person is a necessary party or a proper party. However, we can get these words. It's a judicial interpretation that has happened, and from time immemorial these words have been used as a necessary party and a proper party. Even in common law courts back in England also the same terminology was used, that is a necessary party and a proper party. Now we'll first understand who is a necessary party, who is the most important. Necessary party is a person without whom a suit cannot be decided, a decree cannot be passed, a suit cannot be continued. A party who is absolutely essential in a suit. For example, if I am instituting a suit for simple money recovery against B, Mr. B is a necessary party. If I have given the money to him and I am expecting that money to be returned from him, B is a necessary party. The test is that in the absence of necessary party, the court cannot come into any sort of conclusion. A trial cannot take place. His presence is indispensable. He has to be there, or else the suit can be dismissed for non-joinder of parties. So such a person is called a necessary party, a person without whom a suit cannot be continued or instituted, in fact. Okay, that is necessary party. Now we will go on for the second classification that we spoke about, that is a proper party. Now, who is a proper party? Proper party is a person whose presence is not as important as necessary party. That is very important. See, in the absence of necessary party, as I mentioned earlier, a suit cannot be decreed at all. But in the absence of proper party, a suit can be decreed. It is not like in the absence of proper party, the case cannot go on. But however, his presence is very much required for going into all the issues involved in the suit, for effectively adjudicating the dispute between the parties in the suit. So his presence is necessary for such requirement. He is a proper party. And another important thing is the decree may not be held against him. Decree is necessarily held against necessary party. But however, a decree may not be even against him. I am talking about the proper party here. So, such a person whose presence is required to effectively adjudicate the suit, but however his absence is not indispensable, so he becomes a proper party. So, this is necessary party and proper party. As I have stated, if you are trying to include anybody in the suit, that means you are impleading anybody in the suit, he has to be either a necessary party or a proper party. If a person who does not satisfy this test of necessary party and proper party, such a person cannot be included in a suit, either as a plaintiff or as a defendant. Now, the principles that I mentioned is applicable even for a plaintiff or a defendant. Whether he becomes a plaintiff or defendant is the subject matter of the suit, it depends on the facts and circumstances of the case. But however, this is a general principle. So now we have understood who is a necessary party and a proper party. Now we'll see the general principles on what determines presence of a party as a necessary party or a proper party. On what are the things, what is the test that we have to see to include a party as a necessary party and a proper party, or we'll look at it as from a perspective that what are the essentials of Order 1 Rule 10, what has to be kept in the head before filing an application or before going into a decision under Order 1 Rule 10. One is, scope of the suit should not be expanded unnecessarily. So scope of the suit, the subject matter of the suit should not be expanded. This was one of the principles that it has to be borne in mind when we are understanding Order 1 Rule 10, when you are impleading any party. 1. Multiplicity of the proceeding should be avoided. This is one of the purpose of Order 1 Rule 10. You include such a person to make sure that there might not be further future proceedings. Now, for example, I am suing a person, but another person is also somehow interested in that, and if I include him as a party, he has something to do with the suit, and he will also be affected by this. So I want to implead him. If I don't do it, then if I am seeking enforcement and somehow the person who I am not included might also be necessarily, he comes in the way of this enforcement of the decree, then I might have to file another suit against him, which will lead to multiplicity of proceedings. This cannot go on and on. So that's why, to avoid multiplicity of proceeding, to comprehensively decide the issues, you can implead that party. That is second principle. Third principle of impleading: nature of the suit should not be altered. The principle of the suit, that is the nature of the suit, should not be altered to an extent that it becomes some other suit. That is the third principle. Fourth principle: decree should affect the third party. Somehow that person should be interested in the decree. Somehow he should enable in passing the decree. If he does not do such a thing, then he is not to be included as a party to the suit. So these are the four principles that has to be borne in mind when we are trying to understand Order 1 Rule 10. Now we'll apply this. Now we have understood what is specific performance, and we have understood what is impleading a party. These two are the general things. Before we go to the main topic that is in question, there is controversy of impleading third parties in suit for specific performance. Now we have understood the principles also behind impleading. That is, nature of the suit should not be altered, scope of the suit should not be extended, parties should have something to do with the suit, and multiplicity of proceedings should be avoided. These are the four broad principles of impleading a party. Now, in a suit for specific performance, now I will go with the example that is a general example, that's a general kind of specific performance that we see is the enforcement of agreement of sale. Now, agreement of sale, I agree to, for example, I own a portion of property, and that property I want to sell it to B. For some reason, before executing the absolute sale deed, we get into an agreement to sell the property. That means I'll agree to sell that property in a particular time period, for example in 6 months or 10 months or 1 year, or upon him performing some obligation, upon me performing some obligation. Based on some agreements between us, we enter into an agreement wherein I categorically say that the consideration will also be mentioned in the agreement of sale itself. For what consideration I will sell the property, and when I will sell the property, and upon what obligations can the sale happen. So this will be the basic requirements or basic things that will be contained in an agreement of sale. Now, for example, I have executed this agreement of sale in favor of B, and I will not sell the property. Say within 6 months, I propose to sell the property. I agree to sell the property to B, and even after the expiry of 6 months, he comes before and he insists that we get into sale deed, that I should sell the property as per the agreement. But I won't do it for the reasons best known to me. I will not do it. So at this point in time, B has right to seek specific performance. With the order of the court, he can get the sale deed executed from my side. Okay, so that is typical suit for specific performance on agreement of sale, and I will take that example for us to understand this topic better. Now, what are the examples of impleading a third party in a suit for specific performance? Who are these third parties? Third parties may be co-owners, shareholders in a joint family property, co-partners, subsequent purchasers. These are the kind of general, and persons holding adverse title, that is another kind. So these are the kind of persons we come across as a third party in a suit for specific performance. Now, the question is whether these kind of people, I'll tell again, co-owners, co-partners, person who is having co-owner, co-partners, and subsequent purchasers, and person who is holding adverse title to that of the owner. So these are the kind of third parties who are involved in the suit, and whether they can be impleaded in a suit for specific performance. I will go on with the example for us to be able to understand better. So I am A, I am proposing to sell a portion of property to B. Now B I have failed to execute the sale deed as I mentioned earlier, and B has instituted a suit for specific performance against me, who is the owner of the property. I am the owner of the property, B is the purchaser, and I have not executed the sale deed. B, being the purchaser, has filed a suit for specific performance before the competent court against me, so that he can obtain the property that was agreed to be sold in his favor. Now such a suit is going on, and he is the plaintiff naturally, and I am the defendant. And as mentioned earlier, I have executed the agreement in his favor in my individual capacity. That is very important. For example, we will go into a question. The property which I am proposing to sell it to B, the property which I have agreed that it will be sold to B. Now such a property is a joint family property. But however, I make a representation that I am the absolute owner of the property, and I enter into this agreement. One of the example that I am telling. Now please try to understand that I might or might not, that is a question that has to be still answered, that is a question which is still open. But however, we'll assume a circumstance wherein I have agreed to sell the property to B, and such a property I am not having an entire right, title and interest over the property. Say it's a joint family property, an undivided joint family property. But however, for example, me being the karta of the property, I enter into an agreement of sale without in consultation with other joint family members who are also co-owners of the property. More often than anything, we come across such a circumstance wherein maybe they would not have verified, B might not have verified the title, and he has only gotten the agreement of sale from me. Now what happens, B, as I told, has instituted a suit for specific performance against me only. Then subsequently B comes into knowledge, no, not B, for example the other co-owners of the property, that means my family members, come to know that fine, such a suit has been going on with respect to this property, and they know that it is a joint family property when they have rights. So what they do, they come to the court and file an application under order 1 rule and seeking to be impleaded. This is where the problem starts. Now if they institute an application seeking to be impleaded in this suit, what is the consequence of this has to be understood before venturing into this question. One consequence that arises out of this is, as I told, general principle is that multiplicity of the proceedings should be avoided. At the same time, nature of the suit should not be altered. But here, what is the pros and cons of this when they file an application has to be understood. Now, we'll talk about pros first. Now, that person who is the co-owner of this property has sought himself to be impleaded on the ground that he has interest in this property. So certainly it's a joint family property, he certainly has interest in this property. So he states that without him, if a decree is passed, then it will lead to multiplicity of proceedings. So we should see the pros. Pros is, if we include him, then he subsequently, now he obtains the decree against the property, then he will not be able to execute it because these people will again come forward and file any application execution proceedings as an objectors, saying that even they have rights for the property. So to avoid that multiplicity of proceeding, they should be included now only. That is one argument that can be taken from their side. What is the con? Con is that if they are included in this suit, then what happens? Essentially, the suit turns into a suit for partition rather than a suit for specific performance. Because if the court ultimately has to come to a conclusion that I did not have rights to sell the property, it has to venture into the question whether such a property is a joint family property or not. Only upon coming into conclusion whether such a property is joint family property or not is when the court can essentially answer the question whether I had the rights to execute that agreement of sale or not. Now this rather becomes a question which has to be answered even before venturing into whether the B who is the proposed purchaser is entitled for specific performance or not, because I should hold the property to sell the property. That is a basic rule. If I don't hold the property, if I don't have title over the property, then I cannot sell that property. So for him to effectively obtain the degree of specific performance, he has to first prove my title. Upon my title being proved is when he can seek specific performance. Now in that event, if the other family member who also has a share in the property files an application seeking impleadment, then the nature of the suit certainly will change and it will become a suit for partition before becoming a suit for specific performance. So it joins the different causes of actions rather and into the same suit, which essentially goes against the principle that the nature of the suit cannot be altered is one principle that we learned under rule of impleading. So this alters the nature of the suit, and another principle it goes against is the scope of the suit should not be extended is another principle. Now that being said, the scope of the suit certainly will increase. You're broadening the scope of the suit and including many other questions into this. So this again goes against the basic rule of impleading. So it can be viewed from different perspective. One, you can say that even though he obtains the decree, for example, B succeeds in obtaining the decree for specific performance, then I will still not execute the agreement of the sale deed. Then he will seek execution of that decree. At the time of execution, if he obtains the title also, it will be a defective title. In case if it is held that if it's a joint family property, then it will be defective. So he has to file another suit, or these people who the other owners of the property who are my family members, they have to file another suit against him seeking cancellation of such a decree. So it increases the number of litigations on the same property. So it can be seen as whether it avoids multiplicity of proceeding. On the other hand, it can also be seen that it changes the nature of the suit, it becomes a different suit altogether, it increases the scope of the suit. So we come to some sort of a deadlock here. With this topic particularly, we come to some sort of a deadlock in both the principles of suit for in the principles of impleadment. So this is the basic topic that I want to address today. Now we want to see what the courts have held. It's quite interesting because what is the end to this? There should be some sort of a decision that has to come out to see whether such a person can seek impleadment or not seek impleadment, and if he cannot seek impleadment, then what is his remedy against a decree which is obtained against him in which he has some sort of an interest, or if he is allowed to be impleaded, then what is the remedy for the other side? So these are the main confusions that come. This is the main controversy in the matter. So based on this, number of times, I think multiple times, this has come before the Honorable Supreme Court of India, even our Honorable High Court. But I have started compiling judgments since 2005 onwards till 2018. The recent judgment that I got is 2018. I will not read the judgments and just read the proportion of that. I will not do any of such things. I'll briefly give the citation, and I'll have read the judgment and I've compiled it myself, and I will tell the gist of the judgment so that we'll be able to understand what is the crux of the judgment and what is the judicial pronouncement of this matter. So First, I think the earliest judgment that we can come across, not earliest, I think the most important judgment on this that we can come across is by the Honorable Supreme Court of India, full bench judgment. A full bench judgment that is very important. AIR 2005 SC 2813. I will repeat again, AIR 2005 SC 2813. This appears to be some sort of an authority on this subject because a very similar circumstance has arisen in this. Its citation, the party's name is Kasturi Bai versus Uyam Perumal. So this is the name of the case, and that is the citation number as I mentioned. And the facts of the present case that is come is very similar to what I explained here. This is a reference to the full bench by the division bench to answer this issue, because it essentially causes confusion in anybody's mind, and this requires some sort of an interpretation. So in that view, the division bench of the Supreme Court referred the matter to the full bench, and the full bench was constituted, headed by Justice Santosh Hegde and two other honorable judges. So they have gone into this question. So main point of reference to division bench, that the main point that the division bench answered is, in a suit for specific performance, whether a stranger or a third party has any right to be impleaded or not. Essentially the topic which I am addressing today, essentially the topic of discussion that we are making now, the problem that we have come across. So this was the reference before the Supreme Court. Now what the Supreme Court, the full bench of the Supreme Court told, it said third party cannot be impleaded. The full bench of the Supreme Court in 2005 clearly held that a third party cannot be included in a suit for specific performance. Now it laid down two sort of a test. There should be a right, two sort of test for impleading a person. There is one is there should be a right or relief against some person. First point. Second point, no effective decree can be passed against him. So this is the confined two tests that the Supreme Court provided. So first is, there should be a right or relief against such a person who is to be impleaded. Second is, an effective decree cannot be passed in their absence. So these are the two tests. Based on these two tests, the Honorable Supreme Court of India held that a third party has no right to be impleaded. It also held that if a third party is included, the scope of the suit will increase. That is one point. And also the court went on to make an observation that in the absence of such a third party, it's not that the suit cannot be decreed. That is something that we have to agree, because just imagine if such a person, no, please look at it from a very limited perspective of with keeping in mind the scope of the suit. It is a suit seeking enforcement of a contract. Correct? The agreement of sale is sought to be enforced. Now when you are enforcing that contract, essentially you are only bound by the limits of such contract. So if at all the obligations in the contract have been met with, then he is entitled to specific performance, who the purchaser. If he is not performed any obligation, if there is any breach from his side also, then he is not entitled for specific performance. So in the absence of these people, it's not like the suit cannot be decreed, or suit cannot be gone, the question in the suit cannot be gone into. So that being said, they are not necessary parties is what the Supreme Court says. And also it has been further held that in a suit for specific performance, only the contract has to be seen and nothing else. The right, title and interest should not be gone into is what the Honorable Supreme Court has said. It is said that you please confine yourself in a suit for specific performance to only the contract in question. Don't venture into the other questions of right, title or interest pertaining to the property. This again is against the rule of multiplicity of proceeding, avoidance of multiplicity of proceeding. This observation of the Supreme Court, with due respect, I would like to say that this is against the principle of avoiding multiplicity of proceedings. Here, because the court essentially says that you only look into the contract and don't look at anything else. That is one observation. Then, what is the remedy? Now, the question came before Supreme Court in that reference, that what is the remedy to such a person who is a family member and who is also interested in this property? Now, his remedy is in the execution, is what the Supreme Court says. It says that such a person can come as an objector and object the execution of decree. And it's a general principle. I think all of us know that under Order 21, an objector, if they file an application, if they make out if they make out some sort of a title, then the court can go into any sort of a question. However broad the question is, the court has authority to venture into that. So that being said, they have the remedy in execution to come as an objector. In the suit, they cannot be included, is what the Supreme Court says. So, and another observation it makes, the Supreme Court says that the causes of action should not be joint. So, based on these principles, in 2005, the full bench of the Honorable Supreme Court of India held that a third party or a stranger to the suit for specific performance should not be included. This can be seen, another reason given is privity of contract. The privity of contract is only between the purchaser and the seller and nobody else. Although this judgment, with due respect, is against the principle of avoiding multiplicity of proceeding, but however the full bench of Supreme Court of India has told from the perspective that third party should not be included. That was in 2005. Subsequently, we come across another interesting judgment in 2007. Division bench judgment of the Honorable Supreme Court of India. It's called Shanti Bai versus Paras Finance. Now the citation reference is AAR 2007 SC 3166. I'll repeat again, AAR 2007 SC 3166. Shanti Bai versus Paras Finance. So here the facts leading, it's a division bench headed by Justice Katju, and he has written the judgment here. And the facts coming into the suit is that it's a suit for specific performance, and there is an agreement to sell some property, and the agreement was entered in the name of Paras Finance and Company. So it was Paras Finance and Company. That was the name in which the agreement was entered into. And the purchaser filed a suit for specific performance, and the suit was going on, and the vendor passed away, and his legal representatives along with some other family members filed an application under Order 22 Rule 4 and also filed an application under Order 1 Rule 10 seeking impleadment, and they sought permission of the court to file written statement and take a contrary stance that such a person, the vendor, had no right, title or interest to sell the property. So this was the contention that was taken. Trial court rejected the application. High Court also affirmed the decision of the trial court. So hence it was before the Supreme Court. Now before the Supreme Court, the counsel who was justifying the judgment of trial court heavily relied upon Kasturi versus OM Perumal that we formally discussed, and told that third party cannot be included. A person who's claiming title against such a person, who's setting up an adverse title against such a person should not be included, is what they told. The counsel argued. So court here distinguished from Kasturi versus OM Perumal. The Honorable Supreme Court, the division bench in this judgment, told that the full bench judgment in Kasturi versus OM Perumal can be distinguished. On what grounds? This is very important. The test which was laid down by the Honorable Supreme Court of India in this case was that if there is semblance of title. Now, principally it was held in Kasturi versus OM Perumal that a third party or a stranger cannot be included in a suit for specific performance. But here, in this matter, such an observation was distinguished on the aspect that a person with semblance of title should not be excluded from getting himself included in the suit. His right cannot be taken away, is what the Supreme Court told in this case. So it says that in a suit by A against B seeking specific performance, it cannot be said that C should not be included at all, as what was held in Kasturi versus OM Perumal, and it distinguished and told that the distinguishing factor is a person should show semblance of title. If at all showing semblance of title, then his application seeking impleadment cannot be rejected, is what the Supreme Court told. Ultimately, the appeal got allowed, and since they are also co-owners of the property, established prima facie right, title and interest, so hence they were allowed to be impleaded. This was how another confusion came into way, because the full bench told nobody can be impleaded, And division bench distinguished from that observation, not overruled it, it distinguished from that judgment and told that a person showing semblance of title can be included. And the main reason here in 2007 Supreme Court, made an observation that multiplicity of the proceedings, in order to avoid multiplicity of the proceedings, such a person should be included. So they are contrary to each other. These two judgments, if we go through, they are certainly against each other. So the principles mentioned here are different and the principles mentioned here are different. So division bench distinguished the judgment of the full bench of Supreme Court. So this is what happened. Now, next we come across another very important judgment of in 2010. It's called Mumbai International Airport. I think most of us would have come across this judgment, a very important judgment. Mumbai International Airport versus Regency Convention Center. The citation reference is AIR 2010 SC 3109. I will repeat again. AIR 2010 SC 3109 in Mumbai International Airport versus Regency Convention Center. Facts of the case are the Airport Authority of India enters into a lease with the appellant and says that it will give out some lands for its management, and it will also say that it will obtain some more properties and which are in dispute in litigation, and upon obtaining the property it will execute another lease deed in favor of the appellant. That was what the lease agreement told. But however, such property which was sought to be acquired were subject matter of a litigation. It was a suit for specific performance against a third private party. Airport Authority of India was fighting that suit, and the Airport Authority of India clearly stated that upon obtaining that property, then a lease deed will be executed. That was the agreement. So in that suit for specific performance between that the private party and the Airport Authority of India, the person who the leaseholder here sought to be included as a defendant and told that they have a right, because as soon as they obtain the property, then it will be leased out to them. So hence they have some interest in this property, so they wanted to get themselves implemented. Now the court here, this was a division bench. So before, the division bench headed by Justice R.V. Ravindran, and here in this judgment, the observations in Kasturi vs. O.M. Perumal and Shantibai 2007 Supreme Court, these two were reconciled, and there was an observation made in this judgment that these two judgments are not even contrary to each other. It was told that they are in different contexts. That was what was held, and such a judgment was reconciled and held because there was some sort of a confusion that these two judgments are against each other, whether what is a good law on the point. And that's why in this judgment the Supreme Court clarified that they are not against each other at all. They are given on different factual points, and both of them are correct, is what in this judgment was held. So in another important observation it was made is that a person who is likely to obtain some sort of an interest over the property will not enable him to get implemented in a suit. That was what the observation that was made. So ultimately the application was dismissed, but the observation made in judgments are very important. So it gave an example that in a suit for specific performance, for example, in a suit for specific performance, the property, the subject matter property has been leased out to somebody else. In such a matter, whether tenant is a necessary party or not is the question that should be answered. So the court held that such a person need not be included if the possession is not sought in the suit. If the prayer is that obtain specific performance, prayers to obtain specific performance and also possession of the property, then the tenant becomes a necessary party, because the decree is sought to be executed ultimately against him. So if they are not seeking for possession, then he does not become a necessary party. So this was one of the examples that the court itself gave in that judgment. Then it gave a very open discretion, rather, with all due respect, here an open discretion is given to the court, and given some circumstance, like all the possibilities was explained, that in case such an application is made, court has either power to decline that application or allow that application, or conditionally allow that application, saying that only the nature of the suit will not be changed, only with regard to specific performance such person can put forward his contentions. So this was one of the general observation that was made, And another two principles were laid down, that a new cause of action should not be introduced and it should not widen the scope of the suit. In two paragraphs, the judgments in these two earlier cases have been reconciled in this, but however, again, it left the question much open and there was not much clarity that was provided. So, with all due respect, that is what I could understand from this. Then, after 2010, another judgment that came by the Supreme Court was in 2013. This is also a very important case, Thomas Press versus Nanak Builders, that is 2013 AR 2013 AC 2389. So in this judgment here, subsequent purchasers' right to be impleaded in a suit for specific performance was examined. Section 19 of Specific Relief Act was examined, wherein it is clearly told that a person who is claiming under, see, there is no controversy on the topic whether a person claiming under the vendor, claiming under vendor, or sorry, the purchaser, the person claiming under the purchaser or the vendor, such a person can be included as per section 19 of Specific Relief Act. That was also told in Kasturi vs. O.M. Parimal. It also interpreted section 19 of Specific Relief Act and told that a person claiming under vendor or purchaser can be included as a party. But however, a person setting adverse title to the vendor, such a person cannot be included, is what in 2005 the Supreme Court full bench told. In 2013 also, such a person was partially agreed, and it was told that a person who subsequently purchased the property subject to riders under section 52 of Transfer of Property Act, so such a person can be included in the suit. So that was in what was held in 2013. Next, so these are the Supreme Court judgments that I could come across. Now ultimately in 2018, there are many judgments of Karnataka High Court also on this matter, but particularly the recent most that I could find was 2018 in our own Karnataka High Court. So such a circumstance, a very interesting circumstance came up before Karnataka High Court, and an interesting observation was also made. So the case name is Kumari Lata versus Shivaji Rao. So that is ILR 2018 K Karnataka 95. I will repeat the citation reference again. Kumari Lata versus Shivaji Rao, ILR 2018 Karnataka 95. So in this, a very peculiar circumstance arose that a daughter files a suit for partition against father and mother. Daughter as plaintiff files suit for partition against father and mother. So they are defendant number 1, father is defendant number 1, mother is defendant number 2. Defendant number 3 and 4 are agreement holders from defendant number 1. That means the father agreed to sell, executed an agreement of sale in favor of defendant number 3 and 4 to sell the property. Okay, so the property which the daughter sought partition against. So those two are included as defendant number 3 and 4. Now it's also very interesting to know here that before a partition suit was filed, defendant number 3 and 4 had already filed a suit for specific performance against defendant number 1, which was also pending. So this was the facts and circumstance of the case, and a preliminary question was taken in this case, in suit for partition, not for specific performance, in suit for partition, whether this suit is maintainable. That was a preliminary issue that was raised by the court, and the court answered that in affirmative and held that the suit is not maintainable because first the plaintiff has to seek impleadment in suit for specific performance, and once upon obtaining the decree, then she can sue defendant number 1 and 2 for partition. This was what was observed by the trial court. Agreed by this observation, agreed by the dismissal of the suit, an RFA was preferred, and in the RFA it came before the division bench consisting of Honorable Justice Nagaratna and Justice B.A. Patil, and B.A. Patil has Justice B.A. Patil has written majority of the observation, and Justice Nagaratna has also written another supplementary note to that judgment. Now, what was held here? In this judgment, the Honorable Karnataka High Court heavily relied upon Kasturi vs. O.M. Parimal, that's a full bench of the Honorable Supreme Court, and also the judgment held in Thomas Reuters case, that is in 2013, and also 2010 Mumbai International Airport case. So it was held that such a dismissal of the trial court and forcing the party to file impleading application suit for specific performance was bad in law. It was held that court cannot impose a party to file an impleading application there. So court also gave another alternative, this is very important, another alternative solution was provided by the Honorable High Court, that court could have clubbed the suit of partition and specific performance together and tried them together. That such an option is available to the court. So this is another very important observation that was made. And based on the principles told in Uyam Perumal and Thomas Press case, and also in 2010 Mumbai International Airport case, the judgment was provided and it was held that such an application, forcing the person to file application there, was a bad in law. So this was the observation that was made by the High Court. Now again, looking at all these judgments, the doubt, it still rings in our head, which one is right and which one is wrong. Because I mean, you can't say what is wrong and what is right, but at least it is more like a perspective in this case, because it's more balanced. Both the sides are balanced. There is pros and cons on both the situations. If you allow the application for impleadment, if you don't allow the application for impleadment. Here, if you allow the impleading application, the nature of the suit itself is changed. If you don't allow the application for impleadment, then it will cause multiplicity of the proceeding and will lengthen the litigation. Now, okay, fine. Even in execution proceeding, you can come in as an objector, but how lengthy the question will go on for? The person seeking decree, he has to fight for such a long time. So it is some sort of a common ground and some sort of a deadlock in this subject. And yes, the recent most judgment of Honorable Karnataka High Court is appreciable, but however, it does not mention this, does not take into consideration of the judgment of Justice Kadju, the division bench judgment in 2007, that Shantibai judgment which I mentioned. That judgment has not been considered in this. So as of now, we can follow that, but however, the doubt will still be there in our head, and it is more like a perception, different strand points we can look at this point. So that is the confusion, and that is how it stays. But as of now, I think the laws are in favor that they should not be implemented, and they can seek some other remedies subsequently. So that is how the law is standing as of now, but again, it can be argued either ways. So this is what the research that I came across, and this is what I learned in this topic, and I hope it was of some sort of a help. And these judgments which I mentioned, I think it can be used by the advocates who have seen this. And I mean, I hopefully a judgment comes in wherein every aspect of this is at length discussed and some sort of a law is laid down, so that it avoids some sort of a confusion. Because I mean, some advocates will cite one judgment, another advocate will cite one judgment, and it causes some sort of a confusion in the minds of the court also. So I hope, and I'm just in the fond hope that a situation will come up before our High Court or the Supreme Court, and a larger bench is formed, and so that such a question is conclusively answered, so it doesn't lead to another some sort of litigation and some sort of distinguishing and all those things. So a lot should be laid down to avoid confusions in the minds of the courts and in the minds of general public and also advocates. So that is my hope, and this is the research that I did, and I really thank everybody for their kind patience, and I hope it was informative for everybody. And I again want to thank Daksha Legal for giving such an opportunity. And in conclusion, I would like to say that I am not either in favor or against this, but I hope some sort of a judicial interpretation is given to this, is what my conclusion is. And again, as I was saying, I thank Daksha Legal for giving this platform, and I thank Mr. Basuraj also for coming up with such good ideas, because I've been following his Facebook page for some time, and they have been publishing good legal news which updates us, and some judgments which are very important also. So a brief note is given to the judgment, which I really like and which helps us a lot to understand, because to go through the entire judgment might be difficult and time consuming, and these kind of aids that was provided by Daksha Legal is much appreciated, and I thank everybody for your time. Thank you.